Having a little bit of suspension trouble here. I don't think it's supposed to do that. No, I'm just kidding. Got it all apart here. Trying to figure out why the back wheels were not engaging very well while we were in the dirt. And I took this all apart and found that this spur gear drives that main drive shaft up to the front, which drives the front wheels, and then that little tiny tooth on the back, that drives the rear differential, which is right here. That sits basically right here, and that little wheel there turns this differential. And as this sits here, I can spin it. As it just sits there, I can spin it. It puts a little bit of pressure on that spur gear, but it's loose as compared to what this gear is to that. So you can see it immediately moves it. And see, that gear is barely even moving. I think there's something inside of here that maybe lets that slip a little bit to prevent anything from breaking. I'm going to take it apart a little bit further. I had to take a few screws out and took the differential housing off. Here's all my screws so far, and I've got my drive shafts. So I'm going to continue tearing this apart, and we're going to look further into it. And I believe I'm going to take those 4 screws out and lock this differential. So that's the rear diff, and it'll definitely help the performance. Alright, I've loosened the ESC. That was 1 screw on each side, just 2 screws. And then I've loosened the motor, which was 1 screw on each side in the back here. And that just comes up and frees that whole thing right on up. There's the drive line. I'm going to pull this thing off here and see what's moving around in there. I don't know if you can see how it's bladed on the end right there. That goes into this, which is it's actually a miniature differential. You see the flat spot in there. So it's technically got 3 differentials. This is an inline differential, which gives it some give from front to back. Chasing it around the table. Which gives it some give front to back. So this acts like a little open diff, and I do not like that. I mean, it keeps it from breaking, but it just absolutely had 0 traction. So I'm going to open this up, seal that. I'm going to open that up, seal that, and then we'll see how she drives after that. I'm going to link it onto that drive shaft with JB Weld because it's plastic inside of this housing, so it's definitely going to come apart eventually with all the hammering, and that's why it's probably open diff, 3 open differentials. That's just to keep everything from breaking. And I don't know, I'm just going to be more like off-road or anything more than anything, so it shouldn't be too bad, and it really needs the traction. It was just no traction on the back end. It won't even spin the back tires. It won't even drift, so it just needs a little bit more. Took those teeny tiny little screws out. Alright, in case you're wondering what I was doing, I was just getting all of the grease that I could get off of these things so I could reassemble it with JB Weld. That way the JB Weld will stick to everything. The grease will just keep it from sticking and creating a good bond. I'm going to lock this thing up with some JB. Alright, I'm using the original 2-part JB Weld. Just set some JB Weld up in that pin. Before you put it down in there, just slide the pin into the gear, put a bunch of JB Weld in there, slide the gear on top of that, screw it down, and it'll squeeze some JB Weld all into the little grooves. Just make sure you don't get anything on your bearings. Alright, I've got my 2 ends of the hub basically assembled. I'm going to grab the little tiny spider gears and stick them in there. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and push this together. It's not in the bottom set of the gears in there because it's only on top. But when I push it together, I'm going to turn it, the axle shafts sticking out the end. That way it works it into the gears, and then I'm going to let it set. Alright, what I was just saying is when you stick it back together, you grab this end and you grab that gear end on the other side and you spin it opposite of each other, and it works the JB weld into the gear mesh inside. That way it's completely coated on the inside of the gears, and that will make that solid and give it better traction for when you're trying to get some uphill climbs or anything in the sand or whatnot, and it starts slipping. It's no good when you're slipping. It's like rock crawlers, they have locked differentials, that way they have more traction. And this slipping, it just let the front wheels just spin and spin and spin, so no more of that. You need to wipe any excess off that might be seeping out, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same process for the rear differential. Went ahead and coated that shaft where it goes in. It's going to give that a lot more strength right there, so it doesn't split that plastic where that metal shaft is meeting the plastic. Just like I thought, it looks the exact same, so just repeat the process. Make sure you wipe off the excess. Alright, that's it, put it all back together, and it just pretty much just sits down in there like that. You need both hands to sit it down in there, and you gotta drop the axle shafts in there. I'll show how to do that in just a second. Alright, the axle just sits in there like that, teeth to the right if you're looking at the back of the vehicle. The vehicle's pointing upwards right now. You just set the axle down in there like that. You can see it's turning the front wheels now. And you just take your axle shafts and you just sit down, sit in there in those grooves. There's some grooves in there. Just gotta find the groove. Oh, there it is, and it hooks in there into the groove. And then I'm going to set this on there. This basically just covers up that housing. And it takes a screw here, screw there. These attach up here, and then these upper control arms just attach right here onto this. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and set the motor back in place. The motor is only mounted with these two screws. And I believe the reason for the only two rear screw mounts is because this front round section right here kind of connects right here. It catches it inside this housing. Alright, once you set your motor and set your differential in there, go ahead and grab the cover. It literally just clicks right on there, on and off. There's one center screw, and then one on each side in the front, and then there's 4 in the back, 2 up top, 2 down the bottom, you can see down there. Alright, I screwed that all down and stuck my drive shaft in the end. Going to line it up with that knuckle there, and then attach the spring shackle so it will hold it in place and keep that knuckle inside of there. Alright, it came factory mounted on the inner screw hole there, the strut. I'm going to go for the outer screw hole, which is going to lift up this truck just a little bit. There we go. Just going to lift it up just a little bit, that outer screw hole right there. That's what I was talking about. The inner screw hole is the factory mount, and then the one right there where I attach that strut lifts it up just a little bit. Alright, that's how your linkage should look. Alright, all back together. Final part is attached to CSC back, 2 screw holes. Alright, it's extremely wet out here, so I'm not going to go too crazy because this has not been waterproofed yet. But this is the first test, and we're going to see if it does a little bit better. That back end is definitely spinning. Now we've got 3 wheels spinning instead of just the front 2. Much better. This JB weld has not set yet, so it's going to be a lot stronger in a little bit. But you can see the effects. I mean, it completely changes the driving. Makes this thing much more capable. Like I said, it's real wet, so I don't want to put it under any type of stress. I want it to dry up and bind up. But overall, much better. I mean, you can actually drive it as I get stuck. I don't think I'm going to seal the front or lock the front diff. I just don't want to get this thing wet, trying to be careful not to sling mud up on her. Well, all I've got to say is this thing is just tremendously better. And we're just going to let it dry up, I guess, and we're going to have some fun with it when the ground gets dry. When the ground gets dry, we can actually run this thing, but it's not waterproof yet. I haven't done anything to seal it, so I don't want to get it wet and ruin it. So that's going to be it. Till next time, failers.